Across the border, nothing looks dramatically different, yet something in the air feels noticeably quieter. In Canadian cities, silence doesn't dominate the streets, but a soft calm moves through them, shaping the way people walk, speak, and interact. To many Americans, this quietness isn't obvious at first. It appears in fleeting moments: the muted tone of conversations on the subway, the gentle flow of commuters moving without urgency, the steady politeness that seems consistent to be accidental. Everyday behaviors become small signals of a cultural rhythm that prioritizes calm over assertion, subtlety over volume, and consideration over speed. These quiet habits, often invisible to Canadians themselves, form a cultural atmosphere that feels both familiar and foreign to those arriving from the United States. The first thing Americans usually notice is how controlled public noise feels. Even in lively cities, crowds carry a sense of balance. People speak softly in cafes, conversations on sidewalks blend into a background hum, and even busy transit systems move with a surprising lack of confrontation. This isn't silence, it's restraint, a shared understanding that public spaces belong to everyone and should be kept comfortable for all. Such restraint stands out to Americans accustomed to environments where personal expression and audible presence are more common, creating a contrast that feels at once calming and strangely unfamiliar. Another striking habit appears in the way Canadians navigate daily interactions. Apologies slip into conversations like punctuation, not as admissions of fault but as acknowledgments of proximity. A light bump, a brief interruption, even a shared doorway becomes an exchange of gentle courtesy. This reflexive politeness creates an atmosphere where small conflicts dissipate before they can form. For Americans used to more direct communication, this softness can feel theatrical at first, almost too harmonious to be real, until it becomes clear that these quiet gestures are woven into the cultural fabric. Even the movement of people reflects this quieter sensibility. Lines form smoothly without jockeying. Crowds step aside with unspoken coordination. On sidewalks, there is little sense of urgency, yet everything continues to flow. These rhythms signal a culture comfortable with waiting its turn, comfortable with slowing down. And for Americans accustomed to environments where time feels compressed and efficiency shapes every motion, this slower pace becomes an unexpected part of the culture shock. It doesn't signal laziness, it signals intention, a collective choice to avoid unnecessary tension. The quiet extends beyond behavior into the physical environment. Trains carry a soft murmur instead of raised voices. Parks remain peaceful even when full. Restaurants feel lively yet controlled, with noise never rising to the point of overwhelming conversation. This subdued soundscape creates emotional space, a sense of ease that many Americans only recognize after days or weeks of living within it. What initially seems like restraint begins to feel like relief. As the days unfold, Americans begin noticing how consistently Canadians maintain these gentle habits. Drivers wave others through intersections, not out of obligation but instinct. People thank bus drivers without theatrics. Grocery stores move at a steady and hurried pace where no one sighs impatiently in line. Each small act contributes to a collective culture where tension stays low and cooperation runs quietly in the background. These everyday nuances, subtle enough to go unnoticed by locals, form the quiet language of Canadian society. And for Americans, this initial encounter with calmness becomes the first step into a deeper understanding of why life here feels so distinctly different. Over time, the quiet patterns reveal something deeper. They are not isolated gestures but reflections of broader cultural values that shape how Canadians move through their days. One of the most defining traits is the national preference for social moderation. Conversations rarely escalate into sharp tones, disagreements tend to soften rather than flare, and emotional expression leans measured instead of dramatic. This calm temperament becomes noticeable in public interactions. Disputes remain polite, customer service encounters stay level, and even moments of frustration rarely spill into the open. For Americans, where verbal clarity and assertiveness often carry social weight, Canada's gentle communication style can feel almost unreal in its consistency. This measured tone blends into another quiet habit, the deep respect for shared space. Canadians tend not to dominate environments with volume or presence. In cafes, students work quietly without spreading across multiple tables. On buses, strangers offer seats but avoid intruding on conversations. In parks, even large gatherings maintain a kind of ambient courtesy. It's a collective understanding that everyone deserves a comfortable sliver of the world, and that public life flows best when individuals temper their impact on others. Such habits can initially make Americans feel detached, as if warmth is missing. But gradually, the intention becomes clear. It's not distance, but respect. One of the most subtle yet powerful quiet habits appears in daily cooperation. Canadians rarely make a show of helpfulness. Assistance arrives unannounced and disappears just as quickly, someone offering directions without lingering. a driver pausing to let another merge, a passerby handing back something dropped without expecting acknowledgement. These gestures feel ordinary to locals, but to Americans they highlight a cooperative instinct that operates without the need for recognition. It is kindness practiced softly, without spectacle. Even the relationship to weather reflects this quiet cultural rhythm. Winter demands resilience, yet Canadians approach it with steady calm rather than dramatization. Early mornings hum with the sound of shovels, sidewalks transform under fresh layers of snow, and children walk to school bundled in layers that signal not struggle but routine. The season doesn't disrupt daily life so much as slow it to a pace that suits the climate. Americans from milder regions notice this quiet endurance most, an acceptance of nature's rhythms rather than a battle against them. The quiet extends into the way Canadians handle wealth and social comparison. Displays of success remain understated. Conversations rarely revolve around income, possessions, or financial status. People emphasize modest comfort over grandeur, practicality over flash. There is an ease around money that avoids both bragging and shame. Americans accustomed to environments where ambition is openly celebrated often find this subdued approach to success unfamiliar. It shifts the emotional climate of daily life toward humility, creating interactions that feel less competitive and more grounded. Another layer emerges in the trust Canadians place in systems and one another. Public safety feels less like something citizens must actively monitor and more like a shared expectation embedded in the culture. Parents allow children more independence, commuters move through cities with lower vigilance, and neighborhoods operate on a baseline of mutual responsibility. This trust manifests in small moments: unattended bags left untouched, bicycles resting without heavy locks, lost items returned by strangers. For Americans, the emotional weight of constant caution begins to lift, replaced by an unfamiliar sensation: ease. This quiet trust fuels a broader communal instinct. Canadians often help without hesitation, yet they rarely broadcast these acts. From clearing a neighbor's driveway after a storm to pushing a stranger's car out of the snow, cooperation feels woven into the cultural fabric. Even in crowded cities, this mindset persists. It's not dramatic or performative. It's steady, subtle, and deeply ingrained, a belief that society runs more smoothly when individuals quietly support one another. What initially appears as politeness gradually reveals itself as something more complex. A collective commitment to maintaining emotional equilibrium. This equilibrium shapes public spaces, softens daily interactions, and influences the speed and tone of everyday life. For Americans, living in this atmosphere begins to shift their own behaviors not abruptly, but gently, as though the environment itself encourages a quieter rhythm. As Americans spend more time within this quieter landscape, subtle transformations begin to take shape. The shift rarely arrives consciously. Instead, it appears in ordinary interactions where the atmosphere encourages gentler reflexes. Voices soften without effort. Patience stretches without strain. The instinct to rush for space, for time, for attention loosens its grip. In a culture where people naturally wait their turn and move with collective awareness, the need to assert oneself in every moment gradually fades. The environment itself becomes a teacher, guiding behavior through calm repetition rather than expectation. These changes become noticeable in routine moments. Americans accustomed to scanning their surroundings begin walking with less tension, observing the world instead of anticipating threats. When cars stop generously at crosswalks, a habit forms, stepping forward without hesitation. When strangers apologize before conflict arises, emotional defenses lower. When conversations proceed without competition for volume, articulation becomes gentler. These habits don't overwrite American identity. They soften its edges, showing how environment shapes everyday emotional posture. Workplaces reveal another layer of transformation. Canadian office culture often values efficiency without urgency, productivity without performance. Lunch breaks are taken without guilt, evenings remain personal time, and weekends are treated as